In this video, I'll be showing you the first 25 things that you need to do on the brand new Apple Watch Series 10. Now, these tips and tricks will help you get the most out of this powerful device, all the way from battery life to increased performance and unlocking new features. Let's get started. And the first thing I want to show you is some really unique and neat watch faces that are specific to the new Apple Watch Series 10. And one of them, as you can see, I'm using on my wrist right now. Now, what makes this watch face so special is, as you can see, if I'm looking at my wrist like normal, you will see all hands move, including the second hand. But when I tilt my wrist away, where normally the second hand would disappear, as you can see, it is still visible on this watch face, specifically on the Series 10. And this is thanks to the fact that the new Apple Watch Series 10 has a display that can go all the way down to 1 Hertz, which means it gets a very low refresh rate while conserving battery life and still being able to show you that second hand move. And this, I think, goes a long way to making the watch look and feel more like a proper watch, where you don't have to first look at the watch to trigger that seconds timer. Even from a distance, say someone spots the watch on your wrist, you can still see that second hand move. I think it's a really nice touch. And just to show you where to find these new watch faces, over on the watch app on your iPhone, we're going to tap onto face gallery here on the bottom. And then on the top here, we have this new watch face section. You want to swipe all the way to the right, and it is these two last watch faces here, both reflections as well as flux, that will show you that second hand always moving no matter the position of your wrist. And again, because of that really low hertz refresh rate going down to 1 hertz, Apple does this in a way without taking significant battery life as well. So it's still a very power efficient watch face while letting you see that second hand move. Now, if you're like me, you probably have multiple watch faces here set on your Apple Watch and probably switch between them often. Personally, I like to set them depending on what I am doing. So some watch faces will have more complications. Others are going to be more toned down for, say, a formal event. Others more colorful, say in the summer. But the point is, it's really nice to be able to quickly switch between your watch faces. Now, the traditional way to do that would be to tap and hold on your watch face, and then using the digital crown, you can then move up or rotate up and down to switch between your watch faces. But did you know there's also a much more efficient way to actually be able to swipe through and switch between your watch faces? But there is a setting that we first have to enable to make sure this works. So to do this, we're going to go on the Apple Watch here into the settings app right there, and then we're going to scroll down to where we find clock. There it is. And then in here, we're going to turn on swipe to switch watch face. Now with this feature on, check this out. If we go back to the watch face, I can simply swipe with my finger from the right hand side over to the left to quickly cycle and switch between my watch faces. Now you really have to get to the edge of the screen, so I've never really found myself accidentally swiping between watch faces, but this allows you to quickly adjust them on the fly once having that setting turned on. Next, I want to show you a feature that I don't know how it took Apple 10 generations of Apple Watches to finally add this to the Apple Watch, but that is the ability to play music straight from the speaker of your watch. So let me first of all show you how to do this. So we're going to open up the music application just like normal. And then let's go ahead and play a song and make sure that the volume is down for now. Don't want to get copyrighted. But what you can do once your music is playing, it will first connect to a device you already have connected, say, to your iPhone, like, for example, a pair of AirPods. And if you want it to play specifically through your Apple Watch, what you want to do is tap on the 3-dot menu in the top right. And then we're going to tap onto AirPlay and then make sure your Apple Watch is selected. And now let me give you a very quick preview here. Turn up the volume with the digital crown. Here we go. As you can see, that now plays from the speakers on your Apple Watch. And I think given the size, the speakers are actually surprisingly okay. Particularly useful if, say, I don't know, you're cleaning your home or something and you don't want to wear any headphones, but you still want to be able to listen to that podcast or a certain song. It's just nice to be able to have it on the wrist. Also, I found specifically with the Series 10, voices are particularly amplified and louder on these speakers when you're using it for, say, a phone call. And the microphones also do a much better job at isolating your voice from background sound. So this is a feature I definitely recommend you check out. On the subject of listening to music on your Apple Watch, you know how when you are listening to music, your watch face will default to a screen like this, which will show you a card to control your music and a sort of smaller version of the watch face. This is something that I personally don't like, and you may not either, and there is a way to change that and have your watch still default to showing you your watch face. After all, it is a watch, so I'd always want that to be the priority. So let me go ahead and show you how to adjust it. So over on the watch, we are going to jump into the settings application, and then in here, we are going to go, oh, hold on, let me turn that back on, the setting we just looked at. And then in here, we're going to scroll down slightly to where we find Smart Stack. And then we have live activities. And in here, you want to turn off auto launch live activities. This way, when you are listening to a song, your live activity or that music player won't automatically take over your watch face. Now, what is neat, and I just do want to quickly show you, is if we go back to that song here, let me turn down the volume, and then if I continue playing that, and then if we go back to the main screen, or to your watch face, you will see we got that tiny little music icon there. So if on the fly you do want to quickly adjust your song, it's just one tap away, super easy. And this way, as I said, it won't take over your watch face. And this next one has to do with charging. This is a feature that is essential and one of the first things I do on any new Apple Watch or iPhone for that matter, and that is to turn on optimized charging. So let me first show you how to do this. What we're going to do is in the settings app, we are going to go over on the main page here, scroll down to where we find battery. There it is, battery. And then in here, we are going to, first of all, see our battery capacity. We are going to turn on the, tap on battery health. And then in here, we're going to turn on optimized charge limit. Now, fun fact, if you scroll down a little bit further, you will also be able to see your battery's maximum capacity, which is basically the battery health reading, which currently is at 100%, and that is, of course, where you want to be. But let me talk a little bit more about optimized charge limit and what this actually does. Well, what this does is the Apple Watch will essentially keep track of how you typically charge your watch throughout the day, or say especially at night. So let's say you go to bed at 11 p.m., you plug in your watch to charge. What it's going to do is it's first going to charge from 0 up to 80% battery life, but then wait with the remaining 20% till closer to when you typically wake up and unplug your watch, let's say at 7 a.m. or something like that. Now, why is this important? Well, what this does is it's going to stagger the charge so your watch won't charge as fast, which at night is not really an issue, and that's going to produce less heat. Now, heat is probably the #1 killer for your battery health. It doesn't just apply to your Apple Watch, by the way, also to your iPhone, really any battery in a device like this. So this way, your charge will be staggered, it won't charge as fast, and of course, while you wait or when you wake up, your watch will still be ready because it gets to know these habits. So you don't have to worry about your watch not being full. But having this setting on will go a long way to preserving your battery health, letting your battery last longer, and well, ultimately your Apple Watch. Great, so now that we've looked at a feature to activate to help your battery health, preserve it, and help it last longer, let's take a look at a setting to help you save battery life. And this has to do specifically with notifications. Now, I love getting notifications on my Apple Watch, but I want to make sure that the notifications that do come in are actually useful and important, because otherwise I'm just being bothered throughout the day when I don't need to. And of course, second to that, every time a notification comes into your watch will vibrate, your speaker may go off, your screen will turn on, and this will take up battery, especially when you get dozens, if not over 100 notifications per day. So my recommendation is for all of you to go through your Apple Watch settings and essentially do an audit of which notifications you want to allow to come into your watch and which you don't. So to do this, we're going to go over onto the Watch app on your iPhone, and then we're going to tap onto notifications. And then in here, we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom. And as you can see, this will give you a comprehensive list of all the applications that you have installed on your iPhone from which you receive notifications. And by default, as you can see, they will all be on, meaning that every notification that comes to your phone will be sent through to your watch as well. And this, I think, is definitely worth changing. So for example, the ones that I like to keep on are going to be certain finance applications, perhaps certain messaging apps, but other things like shopping applications or certain utility applications for your home devices. Here I've got a camera application, right? Another here for another camera application. These things don't need to be sending me notifications and bothering me throughout the day, taking up battery, and of course also, like I said, distracting me while I'm working or doing other things with family, whatever it may be. So this way, essentially, once you've audited this, and again, I really recommend removing like half. That's what I normally would set up. And this way, when your watch goes off, you know it is something important, something that is likely worth checking. Other notifications you can just send through to your phone and perhaps look at the end of the day or something like that. So great for your mental health, and again, also for saving battery. And moving right along, I want to show you a really cool feature of the Apple Watch Series 10 that is worth customizing and adjusting to your liking, and that is the new Smart Stack feature. So this has been a recent addition to the Watch OS operating system, and as you can see, a simple swipe up from the bottom of the display will bring up this menu which shows you your date, your smaller version of your watch face, and also a various range of different cards to give you quick information to core settings or other shortcuts to applications, or even certain tracking things like your distance, your activity rings, or here to quickly set a timer. So some of this stuff I think is really useful, and it's a great way to access little bits of your Apple Watch apps without having to actually open those applications. So I do find myself using this from time to time, particularly for music. I like the distance one as well. The same goes here for the weather. However, there is a way to make this better, and I recommend you do this right out of the box when you get your Series 10, and that is to customize this, as you want to decide what information here is shown and what is not. So first of all, within the Smart Stack, what we can do is tap and hold on any of these widgets, and then from here, as you can see, we get a list view of all the widgets that we currently have, and then here at the top with the plus, we can also add a new one. So let's go ahead and scroll down here to, let's say, an application. Let's go for stocks, for example, right there, and as you can see, we even have different variations of these widgets. So you have particular stocks that you may be following or that are in your watch list. You can even have multiple ones there in one go. And as you can see, that widget will now be added. And of course, it's going to pull that data from your phone. And what is also neat is we do have this little pin here in the top right, and that will allow us to pin a specific widget. So if it is pinned, it will be permanently placed within your Smart Stack. So particularly useful for ones that say you use more often. And of course, if you do want to remove it, simply tap on that little minus icon to remove it. And once you're happy, we will tap on done. Now, what is also cool, let's say you have a particular widget that you want to mute temporarily or not show for a day. What you can do is on that widget, swipe to the right, tap on the little three-dot menu, and here we can mute it, as you can see, for an hour, for a day, or of course, we can also remove it entirely by tapping on the X from there. So that is a Smart Stack. I think this is a really smart feature here from Apple, particularly because, once again, it gives you those app controls without having to actually launch those applications, because they're right on the fly, super quick from one tap away to swipe through here and see all this data. And speaking of smart features for the Apple Watch Series 10, let's take a look at double tap. Now, as you can see, with a simple gesture, a double tap here of 2 fingers, I can quickly bring up, for example, the Smart Stack and then tap again to cycle between it. Now, what is also really cool is this will also work, for example, let's say in the workout application, let's say you start a workout and your hands are really sweaty and you can't or you don't want to touch your watch face. You can simply do a double tap to start and stop a workout, or as you can see in this case, to simply swipe between them. And this even works here within the weather app, so I can simply tap to cycle through and see different weather data, again, all on the fly without having to touch my watch face if, say, my hands are full, or if I just want to single-handedly control my watch without having to use, of course, my right hand. What is also cool is this even works within the Messages app. So let's say here I've got a message. I simply double tap to scroll down to the text field and then tap on SMS. And then as you can see, I can automatically start to voice my response to that message, all while using double tap gestures on the Apple Watch. Now this here I think is particularly useful if, say, you are cooking or, like I said, during a workout when you don't want to touch your watch. Simply use that double tap gesture. I found it to be really reliable and to work particularly well here, of course, on the Series 10. However, to make sure that this feature is actually running and activated, there is a setting that you do want to make sure is activated, and let me quickly show you how to do that. So over on the Watch app on your phone, we're going to scroll to where we find Gestures. And then in here, you want to make sure that double tap is turned on, and this is going to enable all those features and more that I just showed you. And the next thing I definitely recommend you do on your new Apple Watch Series 10 is enable Apple Pay. Now, if you already use Apple Pay on your phone, it'll be super easy to carry those cards over to your watch. Let me, in fact, show you how to do that. So what we're going to do over on your iPhone, we're going to scroll down here to where we find Wallet. There it is, Wallet and Apple Pay. And then in here, you'll have the option to add all or one or multiple of your cards. Personally, I like to just have one in particular added to my Apple Watch here. So what it's going to prompt me to do is to type in my passcode. There we go. So I've typed in my passcode, then you have to type in the security code of that card, and voila, as you can see, the card has now been added. Now, importantly, we have the option to enable express mode. Now, this is something that I definitely recommend you turn on, especially if you live in a city like London, in which you can use tap to pay to check in and out of public transport. This is really great, particularly here, like I said, in London, over on the TfL network or on the tube. All I have to do is simply aim my watch at the sensor without having to unlock it or authenticate it, and it will automatically let me go through. Now, importantly, this method of paying will only work on public transport. So if you are paying for something in a shop, you do first need to authenticate and make sure your watch is unlocked before you can make a payment. And this, of course, is important for security, but for public transport, express mode here is super useful. So I definitely recommend you turn that on. And then finally, to verify the card, you may need to do some two-factor authentication as well. Fantastic. So the card has now been set and will also be used as a default depending on how many you have on your watch. And then to activate Apple Pay on your watch, you want to simply double tap the side button. First, make sure it's unlocked, like so. And as you can see, we now have the card shown, and this will allow you to pay for pretty much anything these days right from your watch. And again, especially useful for public transport. So something I definitely recommend you set up. Another thing I definitely recommend you set up on your Series 10 is the ability to unlock your Mac with your Apple Watch. Now this here is super useful, as once you have this set up, all you have to do is walk near your Mac and your Mac will automatically unlock without you having to type in your password. And then importantly, once you walk away from your computer, it will automatically lock once again. This is really useful, especially if say you're in the office or you're constantly going back and forth, but even at home, it's great. It saves you time from having to enter in your password. So this is a feature that you do have to enable on your Mac. So I'm going to show you how to do this quickly via a screen recording. Now, what you want to do is you first of all want to go over to the Apple logo in the top right of your screen. Then you want to launch the System Settings app. And then in here, we're going to click on to Touch ID and Password. And then here on the bottom is where you'll find your Apple Watch listed. And you want to make sure to turn this feature on. And now that specific Apple Watch will be able to unlock your Mac. Now, if you don't see your Apple Watch here by chance, make sure that they're both on the same Wi-Fi network and make sure that they're both registered under the same Apple ID. And this way your Apple Watch should show. And like I said, from now on, when you walk to your Mac, it will unlock. And once you walk away, it will lock once again. And this brings me to the always on display, one of the best features of the Apple Watch Series 10, and is a feature that you won't find on other Apple Watches like the SE or certain older generations of the Apple Watch. And as you can see, this here is the always on display. So with my wrist tilted away from my face and the watch just being idle, you'll still be able to see that watch face. And again, with this new watch face, also the second hand. And of course, once you rotate your watch, it'll fully awake. Now, for those who really are out to save as much battery life as you can, there is a way to turn off the always on display. And this here will go a long way to adding even more battery life if that is something that you want, or perhaps you have a really long day of travel, or perhaps a couple day short couple of day trip and you don't want to bring your charger. This is a feature you could temporarily turn off. So let me show you how to do this. So what we're going to do on the watch here, we're going to jump into the settings app and scroll to where we find display and brightness. And then in here we have always on. And if I go ahead and turn this off, as you can see, if I tilt my wrist away, the watch turns off completely. Now, again, this is something that I personally don't do. I love being able to see the watch face even when my watch is facing away. But again, for battery life saving, this does go really far. And then the next thing to do on your Series 10 is to enable silent mode. Now, one of the beauties, I think, of having an Apple Watch is that you will feel those notifications come in via a very subtle vibration on your wrist. It's a little bit like a subtle tap on your wrist. I think it's prominent enough to where you don't miss it, but also subtle enough to where the people around you never hear it. So for that reason, I think it's best to run your watch in silent mode. So to do this, we are going to jump back into the settings app here. And then over on the main page, we're going to scroll to where we find sound and haptics. There it is. And you want to make sure that silent mode is turned on. And from here, the watch will be completely silent, of course, until you turn it off if you choose to. Another quicker way to do this is on the watch face. You can tap on the side button here. And then what you can do is scroll down and make sure that silent mode here is activated. So we can go ahead and turn that on or off. Now, like I said, I think the vibration really is going to be loud enough, or rather prominent enough for most to feel. But if you think it is too weak, you can also adjust this. So back in the same settings page, if I scroll down to haptics, we can tap into that and we can actually change it to prominent. And this will make those vibrations even more apparent. This is maybe useful if you are, say, doing sports outside, or you've got a lot of layers of thick coats on or something like that. You can change it to prominent, but for me, I like default and find myself never really missing any kind of notification. All right, let's talk about the app view. So as you can see, by default, we get this really typical, really iconic to the Apple Watch. We get this grid view, which allows you to kind of cycle through and see all your applications. Now, this is definitely a form over function approach in that it looks pretty, but you can see accessing some of the other apps are kind of a little bit tricky. I think the main apps you've got in the center are easy to access, but a lot of them can be a little bit harder to find. So there is a way to customize this further, and I'm going to show you how to do this over on your phone, where what you want to do is tap onto app view, and then in here we can change from a grid view over to a list view. Now the list view is going to alphabetically sort all your applications, and you'll see that every application is the same size, making it super easy to find and to click. And this way you'll really never lose an application. So this is really the more functional method, but of course the grid view admittedly is a prettier, more cooler looking design. Now speaking of the grid view, you can actually also rearrange the applications on your phone. I think doing this on your phone is much easier than on the watch. Get a much bigger display, of course. And my tip here would be to have the most frequently used apps in this region here, because as you can see on the watch face, those are the ones you will see when you first boot up the app viewer. So things like your calendar here, timer, and your workout. Basically this comb here, this little grid here, those will be your most frequently used apps. And as you can see, you simply tap and hold and then move them, and you'll see it change live here on your Apple Watch. And now I want to briefly talk about the activity rings, one of my favorite features of the Apple Watch. I think it is super motivating and does a great job at keeping you active, or being able to see how active or not so active, in my case, you've been throughout the day. But what is really cool is on the Series 10, you now have the ability to actually pause your activity ring. So let's say you are sick for a few days and you just can't move as much as you normally would, or maybe you're traveling, whatever it may be, and you don't want to lose that progress. Well, to pause your rings, what you want to do is launch the activity apps, tap on the rings, and then as you can see here, we can pause those rings for as long or as short as we like. So you can have it for a day, and even set it custom so you can really pause them indefinitely. Of course, you don't want to pause them too long or too often, but on those rare occasions, it is nice that you do have that leniency, and this will of course allow you to keep track of a streak that you may be doing. While we're here in the Activities app, let me also show you some settings here to change with this application on your phone. So what we're going to do is within the Watch app, scroll down to where we find Activity right here. Now, by default, I think all these are going to be on, and I think that the Activity app sends you too many notifications. Now, personally, I do like the stand reminder. That one I think is useful. This will remind you to stand if, say, you are sitting still for, I think it's around 15 minutes or so. It'll give you a gentle reminder to, say, walk for a minute. But all these other ones like daily coaching, goal completions, etc., I think it's just too much. I don't need to be bothered that often throughout the day for the Activity app. So my advice would be to turn all these off except for the stand reminder, and that's going to give you, I think, the most useful functionality without it bothering you of the Activity Rings app. On the subject of useful features, did you know you can take screenshots not just on your phone, but of course also on your Apple Watch, but not by default. There is a setting that we first need to enable. So let me go ahead and show you how to do this. What we're going to do is scroll down to where we find General. And then in here, we're going to scroll even further to where we find Enable Screenshots. And you want to make sure that that is turned on. Now, this way, on your Apple Watch, to take a screenshot, you want to quickly press simultaneously both the digital crown as well as the side button. Like so. As you can see, it will just take a screenshot like that. And as you can see here, that screenshot will be saved on your iPhone within your Photos app like this, allowing you to quickly share it, say, with friends or family. Let's say you've got a new running distance, something like that. You can quickly screenshot it and share it right from your phone. And in this menu, there's one more feature that I definitely recommend you activate, and that is the one right above it, Bedside Mode. Now, first, let me show you what it's like without that. So, as you can see, I'm currently charging my Apple Watch, and what it's going to do is simply show me the watch face. However, if I enable Bedside Mode, as you can see, that is then going to enable this really cool, bedside clock mode on your Apple Watch, where it gives you a really minimalistic watch face, just the time, just the date, and your battery level. And you can see it also dismisses very quickly, but it's very smart. It uses, I think, the microphone as well as the accelerometer to determine if there's any movement, and it will very quickly come back up when you need it to. And of course, depending on your watch orientation, you'll see that it also rotates. That's with the gyroscope inside the watch or the accelerometer. I'm not sure, actually. Could be both, but that, as you can see, will rotate with you. So depending on if you have a kind of dock or that. But if you have your Apple Watch set to the side like this, I think this is a very minimally obtrusive way to not wake up, say, your significant other, and also not blind you with lights, and still be able to quickly see the time here at night. And this will only activate once you have your watch charging. And now, what if you're left-handed and you've bought an Apple Watch? Well, if you're left-handed, you probably wear your watch over on your right hand, looking something like this. But as you can see, this is far from ideal because the digital crown is situated here on the top right corner. So if you want to access it, you have to kind of reach over the screen, potentially touch something in order to access that digital crown, or use your thumb. It's not very comfortable. And there is a way to actually change the watch orientation within the settings. So let me quickly show you how to do this. So what we're going to do is go into General. And then here we have watch orientation. And then first of all, we can choose which wrist we wear the watch on. So we're going to switch that to the right. And then importantly, we can also change where we want the digital crown to be situated. So check this out. If I go in and switch it to the left side, boom, there we go. The watch will now entirely rotate, and this will allow me to take the watch off, flip it around on my wrist, just like so. And as you can see, that now makes it infinitely more comfortable to reach the digital crown, having it on the side of your hand, so you don't have to cover the screen to reach it. And you can see the orientation of the watch very simply changes, and this will then permanently make the watch much more comfortable to wear if you are left-handed and wear your watch on your right. And this brings me to Siri, probably one of my favorite features of the Apple Watch, something I use frequently throughout the day to quickly set a timer while I'm cooking or to add a reminder, add an event to my calendar, whatever it is. It is convenient to have Siri right on the wrist. That does make me use the digital assistant more on my watch than compared to, say, my phone. However, there are multiple ways to use Siri on your Apple Watch, some of which are definitely better than others. And let me show you my preferred and, in my opinion, the correct way or best way to use Siri on your watch. So what we're going to do is tap on the digital crown here, and then we're going to jump into settings and then scroll to where we find Siri. There it is, and then we'll tap into Siri, and then from here you want to make sure that listen for is turned off. Now I'm not going to say the activation phrases here, but once you have these on, what this means is that your microphone is going to be running constantly throughout the day, listening for these activation phrases to trigger Siri when you say these commands. Now this is of course useful in a sense that it does enable hands-free access to Siri, which in some instances can be very useful, but in most instances I found it to actually be more of a negative, in a sense that Siri, in my opinion, has activated quite frequently without me actually wanting it to. So it will interpret another word, and if we're saying these activation phrases, and it will just come up, for example, say during a meeting. And then second to that, and perhaps more importantly, is it does consume a lot of battery, as of course the microphones will be constantly running, listening for those activation phrases. So my advice is to turn this off altogether. This way your mics won't be constantly running. You will save a lot of battery, and Siri won't accidentally be activated. Now, instead, the better way, in my opinion, to activate it is by simply press and holding the digital crown. As you can see, what is the weather today? All I have to do is press and hold the digital crown, and as you can see, Siri will work just like it should. So super useful, again, super easy, still very accessible, and while saving you battery and of course retaining the functionality of having Siri on your Apple Watch. And now I want to show you the noise notifications app. So that's going to be this application here. And what this is going to do is it's going to sort of monitor your environment and show you how loud or not loud it is. Now, this was something that was introduced a couple years ago on the Apple Watch and is a feature that I've come to really enjoy and like to have on. Now, first of all, to turn this on, what you want to do is within the Watch app, we're going to scroll down here to where we find noise. And then here you want to make sure that environmental sound measurements is turned on, and this is going to enable your Apple Watch to periodically scan and see how loud the environment is around you. And this is useful particularly if, say, you are walking past construction sites, or here in London, for example, the tube trains, as you probably know if you're from London, can be incredibly loud. In fact, I've had warnings on my watch saying it's too loud, and that's prompted me to think about putting in my AirPods, for example, to block out some of that noise. At the end of the day, your hearing is so important, and exposure to loud noises, especially repeatedly, will damage your hearing. So this, I think, goes some way to helping protect your hearing. So while you have it here on your Apple Watch, I would say why not turn it on and get that extra reassurance. Speaking of extra reassurance, the Apple Watch has a lot of emergency and SOS features. I know many people, including my parents actually, who've gotten Apple Watch specifically for these features, but you want to make sure that they are all turned on. So to double check this, what we're going to do is within the Watch app, scroll down to where we find emergency and SOS. And in here, we're going to make sure that all of these are turned on. First of all, we have hold the side button to dial. So let me quickly show you this. If I press and hold the side button here, what I can do is dial here for an emergency SOS call by swiping to the right, and that will start a call with my local emergency and SOS provider. And then over on the top here, we do also have the ability to see your medical ID. This will show you things like your blood type, for example. This is something that you will set in the health app on your iPhone, something I recommend you do and make sure is up to date. You never know. It is just useful to have this information at a glance. But again, that first option there will enable you to start an emergency call right from your watch. And second to that is call after a serious crash, basically crash detection. Now, if your Apple Watch ever detects that you're in a crash, it's going to prompt you on screen to basically interact with the watch to confirm that you are in fact conscious and well. And if, however, you fail to do so, it will automatically call emergency services and give your location. This feature has saved lives. You've probably seen ads about this. Really, really powerful. And you want to make sure that that is on. And the same thing can be said for fall detection. I think equally important to have on. You have the option here to have this always on or only during a workout. I say you never know when you're going to fall, so why not have this always on? And lastly here, I'm not going to show this on my screen, but at the bottom here, you do have your emergency contacts, and it's good to make sure that those are up to date, that the numbers are still current, and that the names are all correct. And again, that is something you will set separately within your iPhone, within the health application. All right, so enough from these serious emergency SOS features. While very useful, let's go to something more lighthearted, and that is responding to messages with the keyboard. Let me show you how to do this. So as you can see, I've pulled up a message here within my messaging app, and then if we tap onto the text field here at the bottom, by default, it will go to enabling the voice dictation, which I think works really well on the Apple Watch, particularly here on the Series 10. However, there are moments where, say, you can't speak and you rather type something. So what you can do is go ahead, tap on the microphone and that three-dot menu here on the right, and then we're going to tap onto the keyboard. And as you can see, that's then going to bring on the on-screen keyboard. Now, is this cramped? Yes. Is it usable? Usable? Also yes. So let me go ahead and give you a quick example here. I can go ahead and type out the word hello. Oh, there we go. Right there. And then of course I can also add emojis. Those are probably going to be a lot quicker here to access. There you go. I can go ahead and add some laughing emojis in there as well. But there are moments if, say, you want to type out a quick couple of words and again you're in a position where you can't speak, having that on-screen keyboard, even on the smaller 42 millimeter version of the Series 10 that I have here, is still really useful. And this is how you activate it on the Series 10. Now, you know how on iPhone you can swipe up and go through your app switcher to quickly cycle between your open applications or, say, close an application if you want to. You can actually do the same on your Apple Watch. So to do this, what you want to do is double tap the digital crown like so. And as you can see, here we go. We get a very cool little app switcher menu to quickly cycle and find your different applications. Or if, say, an application isn't running as it should, you can swipe to the right, tap on the X, and as you can see, that will then close your application. So working very similarly to the iPhone. So once again, just a double tap here on the digital crown. And then I also want to show you how to activate low power mode on your Apple Watch. Now, first of all, how to do this is we're going to tap onto the side button. That will then tap onto your battery right here. And as you can see, that's going to give you your battery capacity. And then we can also tap onto low power mode and then turn this on. And as you can see by this yellow interface, we are now in low power mode. Now, what does this actually do? Well, according to Apple, this will disable certain features and actually give you a lot more battery life. Now, Apple will say it pretty much doubles your battery life from roughly 18 hours all the way up to 36. But this is something, of course, that I don't recommend you use often, as it will disable a lot of the smart features that make the Apple Watch Series 10 so great. But again, if you're on a travel day or you're out camping or whatever it may be, and you need to preserve as much battery as you can, low power mode is it really goes a long way, and I think a very impactful feature to temporarily use in those instances. What it will do, for example, is it's going to limit drastically how often it will take heart rate measurements, how often it's going to check your blood oxygen, how often it's going to check for incoming notifications or ping your location in maps. It's going to turn all of that down, and that is going to help save a lot of battery. But again, only use it when you need to, as otherwise I think the Apple Watch here is just such a smart watch, and you want to make sure that you use those smart features that you of course did pay for in this powerful device. And then lastly, underrated but useful to know, how do you actually turn off your watch? Well, to do this, to simply press and hold on the side button here, tap on the little power button in the top right, make sure to not accidentally start an emergency call, and then swipe to the right to power off your watch. The watch, just like your iPhone or iPad, Mac, whatever it may be, it's good to power it off every once in a while to clear up your cache and RAM, etc. Or if, say, it is running slow or not as it should, a restart often fixes the issue. And well, there you have it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If this video helped you out, be sure to leave a like and also subscribe to see more content like this in the future. And also let me know if you have any questions at all. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you check out my iPhone first things to do video, kind of similar to this video, but then dedicated to the iPhone. And I've also done an Apple Watch Series 10 size comparison video, which I'll leave linked on screen right now. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.